they've made our people so desperate that they feel like they're obligated to sign these agreements because they think that's all they're going to get.
Traveling the route of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, tonight, the salmon spawning grounds of the Secwepemc Territory.
We need to ensure that our young people's future is not compromised.
Child welfare agencies want the Manitoba government to stop taking a cut of the funds.
We're calling on the Pope to walk with us on this road to reconciliation.
And continued pressure for an apology from the Pope. Good evening. Welcome to the APTN National News. I'm Beverly Andrews. We start tonight in Ottawa, where a motion calling for Pope Francis to apologize to residential school survivors was debated for nearly 4 hours in the House of Commons. The motion, presented by NDP MP Charlie Angus, calls for the House of Commons to pressure the Church on a number of issues. Here's Annette Francis with more.
The morning began with a brief press conference in the foyer of the House of Commons.
This is a historic day, it's a hopeful day, it's a happy day, where Canada comes to terms with its history by reaching out to Pope Francis, a man who has built a reputation around the world as a voice for justice and reconciliation. And we're calling on the Pope to walk with us on this road to reconciliation.
Standing with the NDP before they head into the House to debate the motion calling for an apology from the Pope are survivors who attended the St. Anne's residential school in Fort Albany. An emotional elder named Kind-Hearted Eagle Woman says an apology is a must.
As an elder, it weighs me down to see all the Indigenous people, the way they go through every day in their lives. And I'm here begging the Holy Father, the Pope, to walk with us, into healing.
After speaking with the reporters, the delegation moved into the House of Commons. Today's motion was first introduced in the House of Commons last week.
No, we don't seem to have unanimous consent.
It failed after a single Conservative MP voted against it. It meant that it had to proceed to a full debate and vote. There are 3 parts to the motion presented in the House today. They call on the government to ask the Pope to come to Canada to apologize to residential school survivors, ask the Catholic Church to live up to its financial responsibility to survivors, and ask all Catholic entities involved in the residential schools to turn over relevant documents. All MPs from different parties spoke in favor of the motion, including those from the government.
In hearing the stories of what happened to real people, you are changed forever. And it is the reason why we have sent now a letter to the bishops to ask them to meet with survivors. That in correspondence is not going to actually change the way people feel, the way a meeting, as you say, face-to-face, hearing those stories directly.
A majority vote is scheduled for next week. It is expected to be adopted by nearly all MPs. But in the end, this opposition motion holds no teeth. All it means is that the House of Commons has reached a consensus, and the onus still remains with the Pope to deliver an apology. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
This week, APTN has been following the trail of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We wanted to find out from people who live along the route what they thought about Kinder Morgan's plan to expand the line and triple the flow of oil through Alberta to British Columbia. Tamara Pimentel takes us to the Secwepemc Territory in BC and shows us that some members there don't like the decisions their leaders are making.
APTN has been driving along the pipeline route for almost a week, stopping in Indigenous communities. In Kamloops, BC, we come across a salmon dance performance on the shores of Lake Thompson. Under the water sits a Kinder Morgan pipeline crossing point. and down the road, new pipes wait to be added as an expansion. Over 100 people of the vast Secwepemc Territory gathered here to protest the $7 billion project. April Thomas's community of Canam Lake First Nation signed an agreement with Kinder Morgan, she says without community consent.
Well, we have the right to stand up, we have the right to be self-determining, and we have the right to choose our own destiny, and this is not it. This is not for our people.
The existing pipeline runs through over 500 kilometers of Secwepemc Territory. The region covers approximately 180,000 square kilometers from the Columbia River Valley west to the Fraser River. Out of 17 bands, at least 4 have signed onto the project. But people from all over the region are here to say the pipeline is causing deep divisions. Organizers Don Morrison and Jeffrey McNeil Seymour say they created this protest to allow these voices to be heard.
We find that, it's our chiefs, like our elected chief and councils, that wind up getting into a lot of the media spotlight.
North of Kamloops, yellow markers indicating the existing pipeline lead us down a gravel road along the North Thompson River and into Whispering Pine First Nation. This band also signed an agreement with Kinder Morgan. Chief Mike Laborde was out of province as we drove by, but told APTN over the phone the project is an opportunity to increase Whispering Pine's jurisdiction over their land by providing work for its members.
It got to the point where we realized that we wanted the same things. We wanted, first of all, to keep the oil in the pipe, and secondly, that they were prepared to invest in our community, mostly into our youth and our elders.
Down the line, those protesting in Kamloops say the pipeline has no future and say nothing will bring them to stand down and allow this project to go on.
To me, that's just another divide and conquer tactic that's been used on our people over and over again. The government of Canada have made our people so desperate. Like we have a housing crisis, poverty crisis, and they've made our people so desperate that they feel like they're obligated to sign these agreements because they think that's all they're going to get.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Secwepemc Territory.
Sentencing for a teenage girl involved in the death of a young woman on a Manitoba First Nation began this week. 19-year-old Serena McKay's body was found outside a home on Saging First Nation last April. Brittany Hobson brings us this update.
Earlier this week, one of the co-accused in the death of 19-year-old Serena McKay appeared in court for sentencing. The teen, who was 17 at the time and now 18, cannot be named because she was underage. She has pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Last April, McKay's body was found on Saging First Nation. Her death shocked the nation and made headlines after 2 graphic videos were released online showing the young woman being beaten by 2 teens. The court heard that McKay was at a party with the 2 girls when the attack occurred. Both the Crown and defense are recommending the maximum youth sentence of 7 years minus the 1.5 years served. The Crown is asking for 4 years in custody and 1.5 years supervised in a community setting. But defense is asking for 1 year in custody and the balance to be served in a community under supervision. On Tuesday, McKay's mother, Dolores Daniels, talked about losing her daughter. She told the court, "I dream about her. I wake up crying and sad that she's not here and wonder what she would have become in life." On Thursday, the judge reserved his decision for sentencing until June, stating that he'd have to go through the 24 victim impact statements that were submitted and approved. Daniel said although she's disappointed the sentence wasn't handed down, she understands that the judge has a lot of material to go through. The second teen, who was 16 at the time of the attack, has pleaded guilty to manslaughter. A date has yet to be set for her sentencing. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
First Nations and Métis Child and Family Service agencies went to court today. They're asking a judge to order the Manitoba government to stop its practice of keeping money meant for Indigenous children in care. Melissa Ridgen explains.
For the past 8 years, the Manitoba government has been keeping 20% of the baby bonus money that Ottawa sends to Manitoba for kids in care. The money used to be divided up among child and family services agencies to be used for things like specialized programming, clothing, education savings, and so on. But in 2010, the NDP government decided to keep 20% of the children's special allowance cash it receives from the Canadian Revenue Agency, money that parents across Canada receive each month, known as the Child Tax Benefit, or baby bonus.
We need to ensure that our young people's future is not compromised based on trying to balance the budget, or trying to throw money that is earmarked for our young people into general revenues.
Just how much money for kids has been kept by the province?
And since the clawbacks began, we estimate that it's total about $266 million.
This money that the provinces takes away from our children is put into general revenues to fund what we really don't know.
A notice of application was filed Thursday arguing the practice is illegal under the act that governs the children's special allowance and asks a judge to make the province stop.
While non-Indigenous CFS agencies have also faced this clawback, they're allowed to run deficits, something that Indigenous CFS agencies are not. A judge will consider this notice and decide whether or not to intervene. Melissa Ridgen, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at problems in Yukon group homes. But first, a first look at the special edition of Nation to Nation and tomorrow's weather.
I literally had my hands tied. I was handed a failed treaty, one of the worst agreements, I think, across Canada for a BC treaty. Drove us right down into financial despair.
Regardless of what happens, whether it goes ahead or not, we don't want to be left behind, right? At the same time, of course, I'm concerned about, like I said, our salmon, climate change, these kind of issues.
And Aboriginal rights are the same. They're kind of an overarching kind of right that's a higher level of right than the debate between Canada and the provinces.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's what's coming up on our special West Coast edition of Nation to Nation. We speak to the chief of the Yale First Nation. Yes, he took Kinder Morgan's offer to allow the Trans Mountain Pipeline through his territory, but only as a way out of dire poverty for his community. We also speak to the chief of the Laura Nicola Indian Band. His community has a conditional deal with Kinder Morgan. If the pipeline is built, he doesn't want his First Nation left behind. And we speak to the lawyer who drafted Section 35 of the Constitution. He says Indigenous rights hold the cards in the pipeline debate. That's coming up right after the national news.
Cloudy in the east, plus 17 in Fredericton and Halifax. Cloud in Nikchawak and minus 10. More cloud in Cartwright and minus 7. Sunny in Septiles at plus 7. Cloud in Val-d'Or at plus 6. Southern Ontario is also cloudy, plus 15 in Peterborough and London. More cloud in Northern Ontario, minus 1 in Kapuskasing, plus 5 in Sioux Lookout. Sunny in Flin Flon, plus 11. More sun in Island Lake, plus 5. Brandon is also sunny, plus 12. Partly cloudy and plus 16 in Gimli Harbour. Sunny and plus 18 in North Battleford. More sun in Regina at plus 15. Stony Rapids is partly cloudy and plus 12. Meadow Lake has sun and plus 16. The issue of treatment in government-run group homes dominated the spring sitting of the Yukon legislature. For as whistleblowers, former staff, and kids in care reported issues of abuse and neglect. Shirley McLean brings us this report.
Can the minister explain how firing a whistleblower for raising concerns about the treatment of children is showing them support?
Throughout the spring sitting, both opposition parties hammered away to the Minister of Health and Social Services about systemic issues plaguing Yukon group homes.
We have reports of youth being locked out of group homes in winter. We have whistleblowers identifying a myriad of concerns, most unwilling to go to their supervisor for fear of retaliation. We have a whistleblower who was fired and is now taking the government to court.
Minister of Health and Social Services Pauline Frost says her department is taking those concerns seriously and has asked for an external review by the Child and Youth Advocate.
We're not in the business of making life difficult for young people. We're here to make life as easy as possible for children that already are having a difficult time.
Calgary-based social worker Kevin Mellis worked in Yukon group homes for 5 years and quit in 2006.
When I was there 14 years ago, we had challenges of the same sort. Internal violence from within, kids lashing out, staff feeling not feeling safe and not having a place to advocate for their own safety.
He wasn't one of the whistleblowers that complained, but does say when he worked there, he felt the system wasn't working for the kids.
I just felt that I was grinding against a system that just wasn't open to changing. Advocating for better living conditions for the kids and the youth that I was working with was near impossible. And so I just ended up leaving.
And we have many of those very detailed emails coming from people who are hoping for change.
Leader of Yukon's NDP, Liz Hansen, says the minister needs better advice.
Details that give me a sense that this is somebody speaking from the heart, speaking from experience, and you can't discount that. So I think the minister needs to really seriously reconsider some of the advice that she's been getting.
Despite the allegations, Frost says her department is making changes. One of them is bringing the number of kids in care down by implementing a new kinship care program. That's where kids in care can stay in their communities with extended families, and those families will be paid the same rates as foster care parents. In 2010, there were 230 kids in foster care and group homes. Today, there are 119. Shirley McLean, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Police and Indigenous peoples have a long history of racial tension. APTN Investigates reporter Tina Roach went looking for the answers why in her episode, Racism in the Ranks. Here's a preview.
No more racist police!
For Indigenous people in Canada, systemic racism in policing looks like this.
Neil Stonechild was found frozen in 1990. An inquiry into his death found that Saskatoon police officers...
of the case, this man, Donald Marshall.
We accept unreservedly any criticism of those members of the RCMP who may have contributed to this injustice.
And a centuries-old tinderbox of distrust has ignited.
Shot an unarmed man!
Dudley George was one of about 30 protesters who built barricades.
The Thunder Bay Police Service is being examined for how it polices Indigenous people.
For us currently, though, what we see is business as usual.
There was no justice served here today.
The Stanley acquittal in the Bushy death, that acquittal is a reflection of a much larger fissure with society. Indigenous people do not see justice being done.
You can watch that entire episode tomorrow night, right after the APTN National News. Coming up after the break, healing through dress and dance in Thunder Bay. But first, the rest of tomorrow's weather. Alberta is mostly sunny. Peace River is plus 22. Fort McMurray, plus 20. Plus 23 in the south in Calgary and Lethbridge. Vancouver has sun and plus 17. Quesnel is also sunny at plus 21. Cloud in Prince Rupert and plus 13. More cloud in Fort Nelson, plus 15. Cloudy and plus 9 in Watson Lake and Dawson City. Wrigley is plus 7 and cloudy. Yellowknife is also cloudy at plus 5. Partly cloudy and minus 7 in Polituck, plus 2 with cloud in Inuvik. Baker Lake is sunny at plus 11. Cambridge Bay minus 13 with cloud. Partly cloudy and minus 16 in Igloolik. Cloudy and minus 10 in Clyde River. Students at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School in Thunder Bay were busy making their own jingle dresses this year. The new dancers were welcomed in a special ceremony yesterday. Our reporter Willow Fiddler was there.
The colors and sounds here are beautiful and mesmerizing, but the jingle dress is more than that.
The jingle dress is the healing dress, and if I didn't start dancing, I really wouldn't know where I would be today, so...
Cheryl Sagashi started dancing jingle dress when she was a student. She said it helped keep her grounded. It's also helped her during times of grief and loss. In 2015, her brother was found dead in the McIntyre River. Now, she hopes the dance will help others heal.
There's been a lot of, like, a negative atmosphere around the rivers and the 7 students inquest and all that stuff. And I was beginning to see, like, it was all, like, negative stuff. So I wanted to bring, like, some positivity and some culture and just some pride, some identity, like.
Completing her master's in social justice at Lakehead University, Sagashi did her placement at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, where she would teach students in the clothing class how to make their own jingle dresses.
They're really good at designing their own dresses, so I think that was some of them were really creative, and some of them were really intricate, like the way they put on the jingle dress codes.
In a special ceremony for the new dancers, Destiny Fiddler wore the dress made by one of her friends.
But she didn't want to dance today, so I had the honor to dance with this dress on and was asked.
8 students in total were welcomed into the dance circle by a drum group, elders, and aunties who danced with them. For some of the students, like Alina Crow, it was her first time dancing in the circle.
I was scared, but I did it.
How do you feel now?
I feel proud that I did it.
One of the aunties, Nicole Richmond, said it's important to support the young dancers.
And I think when you carry yourself in a jingle dress, you're walking in a path of your ancestors who have preserved these traditions, who have gone before you in a good way. And so when they talk about healing, you're healing for your ancestors, but you're also healing for future generations.
Known to some as the River of Tears, these women are now helping transform it to the River of Hope.
I just love my culture. I wish there were more opportunities out there for me to do stuff like this.
The school said they hope to turn this into an annual event. Willow Fiddler, APTN National News.
Thank you for joining us at the APTN National News for this Thursday. Immediately following our newscast, a special edition of Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand, coming to you from British Columbia, the heart of the debate on the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Pipeline. I'm Beverly Andrews. Have a wonderful evening.